Death Row Records was the most powerful label in the game back in the 90s. Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, and Tupac were the face of it all and were selling millions of records. But behind all the success was Suge Knight. He was the most dangerous dude in the industry and built an empire with violence, but it didn't take long before it all came crashing down. This is the wild story of how Suge Knight went from earning hundreds of millions to going bankrupt and spending the rest of his life in prison for manslaughter. Let's get right into it. Suge Knight came up in Compton, California, and was active in the streets as a kid. He was always big and athletic, and at a young age, he learned how to use that to his advantage. Suge told The Guardian that he used to catch a bus to wealthy LA neighborhoods with his homies so they could rob rich kids outside their schools. Suge had ties to the Bloods, but he wasn't just gangbanging all the time. He tried to make a legit career out of football first, and even played 2 games for the LA Rams, but he wasn't good enough to be a full-time pro. He left football behind, and that's when he decided to get into the music game. He started out working security and doing promotion for artists like Bobby Brown. Suge watched and learned how the industry worked, and he realized that being on the publishing side was where all the money was. Suge was smart, but even early in his career, he couldn't stay out of trouble. In '87, he was arrested for domestic violence after he allegedly got into a fight with his girlfriend and chopped off her hair. Then a few weeks later, he was booked again on attempted murder and carrying a concealed weapon while in a stolen car. According to reports, Suge stole the car and let off 3 shots at the dude he jacked it from. It was a serious case, but Suge ended up pleading guilty to a misdemeanor and got off with just 2 years of probation. Then in 1989, he went official and started a music publishing company. One of his first artists was a dude named Mario Johnson, who allegedly wrote the track Ice Ice Baby, but never got his royalties. Vanilla Ice had become one of the hottest artists in the world off of the track, but that didn't matter to Suge. According to Ice, one night he was at a restaurant in LA with his bodyguards when Suge and some goons walked in. Suge kicked Ice's bodyguards from the table and sat down. Then, he just stared at Ice for a while before he asked him, "How you doing?" Suge and his crew left without doing anything, but that wasn't the last time Ice ran into him. He said it scared him because Suge would just show up wherever he was at, and Ice had no clue how Suge always knew where he would be. Then one night, Ice went to his room at the Bel Air Hotel in LA. When he walked in, Suge and his crew were already there waiting for him. It's not clear exactly how everything went down, but Suge and his goons allegedly jumped Ice and his crew. Then Suge allegedly dangled Ice off of his balcony and demanded him to sign over the royalties to Ice Ice Baby. Ice said he was never hung over the edge, but he told ABC that he was terrified during the situation and he ended up signing the papers and losing out on around $4 million. Everyone involved with the situation has a different story about how it happened, but obviously, Suge did something to scare Vanilla Ice badly enough that he just handed over millions of dollars without putting up a fight. With the money from Ice Ice Baby in his pocket, Suge had his foot in the door of the music industry, and in the early 90s, started managing artists like DJ Quick and the DOC. At the same time, NWA was starting to fall apart. Eazy-E and Dre were beefing over finances, and Dre allegedly linked up with Suge and had him check the situation out. Dre and the DOC both wanted out of their contracts with Ruthless Records, but Eazy wouldn't let him go. Dre couldn't get out of the situation like a businessman, but his homie Suge knew how to take care of it. Nobody knows exactly how it happened, but here's what most people believe. Suge went to press Eazy about the contracts at the studio, and he told Eazy that he had already kidnapped NWA's manager, Jerry Heller, and was holding him hostage. When Eazy still wouldn't give in, Suge pulled out a slip of paper that had Eazy's mother's address written on it and told him, "I know where your mama stays." Eazy released Dre and the DOC from their contracts, and that's when Dre and Suge linked up to create one of the most legendary labels in the rap game. In 1992, Dre released The Chronic on Death Row Records and changed everything. It's still considered to be one of the best rap albums ever made, and it turned Death Row into the hottest new label in the game overnight. Suge had legit money pouring in, and it made him feel untouchable. The same year that The Chronic dropped, Suge invited 2 rappers to Death Row. Linwood and George Stanley were 2 brothers trying to make it in the rap game, so getting put on by Suge was a huge win. While they were all in the studio, Linwood picked up a phone to make a call. According to the reports, the phone was reserved for jail calls from a drug kingpin named Harry O. Harry O put up the cash to get Death Row started, and Suge had a phone in the studio just to take his calls. Witnesses say that Suge told Linwood, "Say, blood, don't be on that phone." But Linwood clapped back and told him, "Don't be coming at me with all that gangbanging shit. I'm not from LA." That's when Suge proved just how violent he could be. According to witnesses, Suge put a gun in George and Linwood's faces and made them take their clothes off. Then he brutally attacked them, took their IDs so he could track them down later if they went to the police. A lot of people would just move on and consider themselves lucky to be alive, but the Linwood brothers went straight to the cops and got Suge arrested. He was already on probation and could have ended up doing time in prison, but then Suge proved that he knew exactly how to work the system. He pleaded no contest and got hit with 5 more years of probation. And when the brothers tried to sue him, Suge gave the prosecuting attorney's daughter a record deal. The attorney got fired over the situation, but Suge dodged any charges and went right back to handing out beatdowns. People who saw everything up close said that Death Row was a terrifying place to be. Snoop, Dre, and Pac were 3 of the biggest artists in the industry, and Suge was making a name for himself too. He allegedly would drag Death Row employees into back rooms and beat them while they screamed for their lives. Everyone else had to keep working while it went down, because they knew if they said something, they'd be next. But even though Death Row was said to be a nightmare for anyone working there, the label had taken over the game completely. With Suge straightening everyone out on the business side, and 3 superstars putting out classic records, nobody could stop Death Row. It had only taken Suge a few years to create the most powerful label in the game, but it all started falling apart even faster. The first major blow came when Dre decided to leave the label. According to people involved with the situation, Dre didn't like all the partying and drama at Death Row. He just wanted to show up to the studio and make music, but everyone else acted like it was a frat house. Dre left and started his Aftermath label, so his old homie Pac dropped the track Toss It Up and said, "No longer Dre Day, Eddie Verderci, blown and forgotten, brought him for plotting child's play. Check your sexuality, as fruity as this Alizé. Quick to jump ship, punk trick, what a dumb move. Cross Death Row, now who you gonna run to?" Dre didn't clap back, but he wasn't the only dude at Death Row who didn't like the situation. Snoop Dogg helped put Death Row on the map when Dre brought him in to help on the Chronic, and his debut album Doggy Style was an instant classic on the West Coast. But after beating the murder case and losing a lot of homies to the streets, Snoop wanted to leave all the gangster stuff behind him. While Suge and Pac were going to war with the East Coast, Snoop just wanted peace. But after he showed love to Biggie and Puffy on the radio, Suge, Pac, and the rest of the Death Row crew turned on him, and Snoop thought he might actually get jumped by him. Snoop and Pac had been close friends, but unfortunately, they never had a chance to squash the issue, because just a few days later, Pac was shot and killed in Vegas while he was with Suge. There are all kinds of rumors about what went down that night in Vegas. Some people think Pac wanted out of Death Row and Suge had him killed for it, but others say Pac didn't even die in Vegas and he's chilling on the beach somewhere in Cuba. No matter what happened though, Death Row had lost his third superstar, and that wasn't the end of Suge's bad news. Before Pac was shot in the Vegas Strip, Suge, him, and some other Death Row dudes jumped a crib named Orlando Anderson in the hotel lobby. A lot of people believe Pac was actually killed in revenge for jumping Anderson, and the lobby fight had consequences for Suge too. He was still on probation when it went down, and this time, he didn't get off easy. A judge sentenced him to 9 years in prison for violating parole, and by that point, Suge Knight's career was already up in the air. Suge was released in 2001 after serving 5 years. 1 year later, he was booked again for violating probation. He only got locked up for a couple months, but then got sentenced to another 10 months in 2003 after he punched a parking lot attendant in the face. A couple years later, Suge was shot at a VMA party that Kanye hosted. It's not clear why he got hit, but there were plenty of people who wanted Suge gone. Then in 2014, he was shot at a different VMA party and almost died. Suge almost pulled through and recovered, but 1 year later, he committed the crime that he's still locked up for today. In 2015, Suge ran over Terry Carter and Clay Sloan with his truck after they got into an argument on the set of Straight Outta Compton. Suge drove into both of them at a burger spot in Compton, and Terry Carter was tragically killed. Suge tried to claim that it was in self-defense, but pretty much nobody believed him. He ended up pleading guilty to voluntary manslaughter, and now he's serving a 28-year sentence. By the time he killed Terry Carter, Suge had already fallen off completely. He went bankrupt in 2006, lost ownership of Death Row Records, and even had to sell his house. Terry's death was just the final nail in the coffin, and now Suge will probably spend the rest of his life behind bars. If Suge hadn't been so brutal, there's no telling how big Death Row could have been. But instead of learning how to actually run the business, he used violence to solve every issue, and it all ended up coming back to haunt him. Suge could have been a billionaire and a legend in the rap game, but now, just another broke dude sitting in a prison cell over a senseless act of violence.